Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how to cut up a deer with no special tools. I'm just going to be using a knife and that's pretty much it. Real basic, real simple. It's nothing fancy, but it will get you by. It'll get your main cuts, your roasts, your steaks, some of the main points that you'll want to know about, where to break the deer down. Basically just a real simple way to get the most out of your deer. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first. Sorry, it's already been dirty. I've been working for a little while. This is the knife I like to use. It is a 6-inch semi-stiff Victorinox boning knife. They're like 25 bucks. They're cheap, but they do the job very, very well. Anyway, so what I like to do to start out with is I like to get, that's just sort of hanging on there. Okay. I like to get the flanks out. So I just start up here where the legs attach. Not really where they attach, but just come down and then cut that off. Same on this side. Basically, you just come straight down to where the ribs start, follow those out. That exposes your tenderloins there. Before we get into that though, we are going to take off the front legs. Now, the front legs are not held on by anything other than muscle. There's no joints or anything like that. While cleaning this one, I did already make some cuts, so what you want to do is I grab the leg, take your knife, go through, up and down. Let me expose that there. And just follow around. And you'll be able to kind of, oh, that's a little bloodier than I was hoping. You just want to follow that down and around. Let me clean that up. All right, now you see there's some damage here. You'll just want to trim that up as you go. But once you get your legs off, next thing I like to do is take the neck off. For my neck, if the rib cage ends about right here, so I like to make my cut about straight across from that. So go in and just cut all the way in to the spine. Cut all the way around it like that, and then I like to spin it the other way. I like to do the deer hanging, by the way. I think it's the easiest to break them down to start out with. Take the deer, spin it, and then you can just pull on the neck. And that separates a lot of the joint there and makes it a lot easier for it to come off. There we go. So once you get that neck broke down like that, if I can keep it from sliding all over the place. All right, there's that. We'll come back and get that here in a little bit. Now we got a front shoulder here. What I either like to do with this is make a nice little roast out of this, or you can just put it to trim. Some people like to, I don't like cutting steaks out of it. It's kind of tough for that. So what I do here is, this is technically the brisket, this little flap here, is like to cut some of the thin flappy stuff off. Set that aside for later. Now from the elbow here, there's your front leg, your elbow, take your knife and cut in all the way to the bone. And then just follow that bone down to where it stops. And then I like to flip it over. There is a joint right here where the shoulder blade attaches to the rest of the leg. Doesn't take much. Once you find that joint like that, you can just easily separate the two. I'm gonna trim this up here a little bit. Okay, so once you get to this point, there's a big chunk of fat with a gland right here on the shoulder. So I like to take that part off right there. We'll trim that up later. So now you're left with the shoulder blade attached to the piece of arm meat there. Now since we're doing this without using a saw, I'm just going to go and I'm going to cut along the shoulder blade and make a nice boneless roast out of this. If you're using a saw, you can easily make a cut across here and then get 2 roasts or one big one. This one's going to end up being right around a 3-pound roast. So just going to find the edge of the shoulder blade, you're going to follow it up and just cut it straight off. All right, go in the trim pile. Now I got this flap here, I'm just going to go ahead and knock it off right there. I like to lean these roasts up quite a bit. I don't like to have a whole lot of fat on them. I think it kind of makes them taste funny. Depending, especially if it's a buck, I don't like it. Trim off whatever you don't want to eat, basically. So there's a nice little boneless roast there. You can get one out of each shoulder depending on where it was shot and all that stuff. that's what I like to do with these front shoulders. Not everyone likes to roast. Some people do, some people don't. Me personally, I'm not a big roast guy, and so most of the time I don't save them for myself. Some customers do want them, so I'm going to show you guys how to save them. That's the easiest way to get a nice sized little boneless deer roast out of the front shoulder. I'm going to get these boned off here, and we'll get on to the next part. The neck you can also make into a roast, or a lot of roasts actually, especially on these big bucks like this. So what you can do, if you have a saw, you can just go through it and just cross cut them, and they make a nice big roast. Some people really like them. I'm not a big fan of them. You can do it that way if you want. There's about a million different ways to cut up a deer. This is just the easiest, simplest way for me to do it. So I brought the deer out here, put it on the table, and I got the tag. In Kansas anyway, the tag is a carcass tag. It goes with the carcass. It is not an antler tag. The head does not need the tag, the carcass does. I'm going to show you how to take off the hind legs, pull the tenderloins, and the rest of it here. All right, what I like to do is I like to pull my tenderloins first, that way I don't mess those up. So right at the base of the pelvis here is where the tenderloin attaches all the way down through. So I like to make a little cut right there, cut across it, and then you just gotta go in and follow the bone along the base of it. Now, if you cut on the inside of the spine here, down, both sides, they pretty much just jump out once you get them loosened up. So I'm pulling this out, and so once I get it to this point right here, I mean, they just pretty much just fall out of there. And then you have an untrimmed tenderloin. Put that aside for now. Do the other one. When you're boning stuff off, pretty much all your cuts are held together by seams. So like you can tell, there's just a seam in the muscle here where the tenderloin lays against everything else. Just sort of loosen it up, and a lot of stuff you can kind of just rip out by hand, but a knife kind of helps it along. There's the second one. All right, now I don't have to worry about messing those up. I can get to my rounds here. When you're holding your knife, don't hold it like you're not sure what to do with it. Be firm with it, because you do not want that thing slipping out of your hand. So I grab it like this, take the first about 1.5 to 2 inches of your knife, that's what I use the most, just the tip of the knife here, and run it along the bone, okay? And then you're gonna hit a joint right here. This is just a regular ball and socket joint, and what you wanna do is, there is, I believe it's the sciatic nerve, I'm pretty sure that's what it is, but you wanna break that right there. Now, the pelvis bone is sort of a weird shape, it's kind of triangle shaped almost, you'll see it here after a bit. But once you get that cut right there in that socket, what I like to do is once I follow that up here, I like to follow this bone out here. This is where your sirloin is. And I just a little bit, I'm only going in about 1/2 inch, I'm just loosening it up. And so once you get around this here, now up here at this point, the bone makes a triangle. So you gotta go up and then back around. It's just a weird shaped bone basically. And you just lay your knife against the bone and you can just cut it all out. And you should end up with something like that. Now you gotta do the same thing on the other side. Set that aside for now. Now, when you shoot deer, there is damage. I mean, unless you get a headshot, that's my favorite, is to get either a headshot or in the neck. You lose the least that way. But when you have damage like this, you just gotta trim it out. Sometimes, like this right here, is just real surface damage, and you can just trim that out. Whatever you don't wanna eat, throw it away. What we're gonna do now is get our back straps out. Now the way I like to do this is I'll take my knife and I like to peel out the first little layer here. I like to get a lot of the fat off right away. It just sort of makes it easier. And there's a membrane that is in between the fat and your back strap. And it's, once you get it started, it's pretty simple to pull off. But I like to get that loosened up. Now, if you can't find the seam in between the two, you can also go and just take your knife and lay it right in against the spine and just cut down the spine as well. All right, so what I like to do once I get to this point is I like to take off my rib meat before I pull these out. So I just follow the seam down to the bottom of the back strap and then just cut straight in. Once you get here, I cut down to the bone and then down the rib. It just saves work for later. You just peel these ribs out and you can worry about trimming the bloodshot stuff out later because we got a lot of that work to do yet. Once you get that rib meat off, we'll just toss it aside for later and do the other side. When I'm cutting this rib meat off here, what I'm doing is I'm actually holding the knife kind of towards the ribs. I'm actually trying to shave them off. Now that we have the rib meat off the sides, we still gotta go in between the ribs. I wanna have it cut down the spine on both sides, and you wanna run all the way down. Don't want anything connected there. And make sure you get this lovely tendon out of there. That thing you will chew on till eternity if you leave it. Once you have it split down each side, or you can do one at a time, what I like to do is take the knife and just work it off. You can come in from the side and cut along this way. I like to do it this way. I feel like I get more meat off of it. So you can do it either way. This is just the way I do it. And it takes a little bit because you're hitting the spine here. You gotta kind of come over it and then down along the rib. So it takes a little bit of practice to get used to. If you take too much at a time, you get these deep cuts into your back strap also. So I'm just using just a little bit of my knife at a time. All right, once you get down here to the pelvis here, where the sirloin bone comes out and the back strap goes in, you can take your knife and go right on the inside there. And it's just a little bit of an angle, and you just go in there, and that makes that cut. And then your back strap is free. We'll set that aside for later. Now you guys just go through and take all your trim off. That way you can make more, I'm gonna call it hamburger, but you know, ground deer, ground venison, whatever you wanna call it. On your carcass here, if you happen to get a gut shot deer, I do not recommend putting the rib meat in. It will make your burger taste off. Another thing, make sure when you're doing your trim, get as much fat out as you can. Deer fat is not a great thing in your burger. So the more fat you put in there, more of that wild game flavor. Some people say that it's a little bit more of a rancid flavor. I don't get that so much, it's just that wild gaminess. All right, the hind legs. This is where the bulk of your best meat is. What I do here to start out with is I will take it and I'll cut that tendon, and then there's a seam right here where you cut that off. You can open that up and just run it up to this joint here. So once you come down, follow this seam, stick your knife in, it's about 2.5, 3 inches in, and you can follow that bone all the way up to this joint, or where you popped that off earlier. Once you get down to here, you can see there's a seam where you can peel this off. And just use the tip of your knife, especially if you're not sure where it is, but you can just pull off this inside round here, or top round, whatever you want to call it. And this is the piece that everybody wants right here. So this is the biggest solid piece of muscle in a deer. It's a really nice roast, or you can make stew meat, jerky. This is what everyone loves for jerky because it's big, it's solid, and it doesn't have a whole bunch of gristle and fat running through it. So we're gonna set that aside for later as well. And then once you get that peeled off, right next to it is the eye of round. It's not very big, but it also is a nice little piece of solid meat. Again, just follow your seams. You could just kind of help them along with your knife. And that is the shape of the eye of round. It's just sort of long, skinny, looks kind of like a tenderloin, except a little bit beefier. Now, the rest here. What I like to do is I like to peel out the sirloin tip. I'm using a lot of beef terms here. I'm not sure what the actual venison terms are, but I'm just sort of relaying everything as it would come off of a beef. And I'm just using the very little front part of my knife again, and just shaving this bone right here. You want to get this femur taken out. Like, get under it, Pop it out. All right, now this here, a lot of muscle, a lot of sinew. I mean, deer made for running. That makes good grind. Now there's another seam in between the bottom round and your sirloin tip. And you can kind of just peel that out. Now up here, if you did it right, or if you did it lucky enough, you can cut down here and peel out your sirloin. Again, it's just another seam. That there's your sirloin. Trim it up a little bit here. It's not the easiest piece to save, but if you can, that makes some pretty good steaks too. They're not real big. Okay, now that you got your bottom round and your sirloin tip, peel this out here. Now, sirloin tip, it does have a little bit of sinew running through it. You can see kind of where it's different parts of the muscle put together, but trim it up a little bit and it makes a really, really nice roast. You can seam it out and make jerky out of it. It makes a lot smaller pieces, but you can also make great stew meat. Every once in a while you make minute steaks out of it, but you gotta take all this silver skin off. Nice little dandy roast though. The bottom round, just sort of, you can kind of see where the fat and the meat meet. Now you wanna take the fat off. There is a bunch of silver skin that runs along that side. Just cut that off. Since you have a bunch of grind already, this will get lost in the grind. You won't know it's there, but if you are picky about that, you can just sort of lay it down, and it's kind of like filleting a fish. Not really, because it takes a little bit more getting used to. But you can lay it flat and just scrape your knife over the top of it, and you can get most of that out if you want to. All right, backside. Deer fat is really weird. It's kind of hard, but it's kind of spongy at the same time. A lot of times you can just sort of put your knife right underneath it and push, and you can just sort of flake it off. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you figure it out, believe me, you'll be glad that you learned how to do that. All right, now this piece here also makes a great roast, but jerky, that's what, I mean, who doesn't like jerky? Trim it up more. You want to get more of the silver off, the fat there on the back side, and then you just want to slice it for jerky as well. But we'll chuck it over there for now. Back straps. This is the piece everybody wants. Well, most everybody, not everybody. But there's lots of different ways to get this silver skin off. My favorite way is just take the tip of your knife, go right underneath the skin, and just keep a little bit of upward tension, just a little bit. Get too much, you'll cut through it. Down too far, and you'll cut into your meat. But just a little bit of tension, and you can just sort of glide right underneath it. Trim off whatever meat gets stuck onto it. If you don't cut it off before you cut your steaks, you'll be chewing on it forever. It's not fun. You want to do this to your whole piece. Once you get your back strap all seamed out, then it is time to cut it. I like to square it up just a little bit, get rid of that. And I like to make butterfly back straps. So what you want to do then is you just want to cut in a little ways. I'm going to cut these 1 inch, cut in, but not all the way through. Then go another one, same distance, cut all the way through, and fold it out, just like a butterfly, okay? That's why they're called a butterfly. Same way with pork chops, anything like that. It just makes them bigger because, I mean, that's not a whole lot for a steak, but you get 2 of them stuck together still, make a pretty dang nice steak. So just part of the way through, all the way. Takes a little bit of practice. You aren't gonna be fast at it to start out with. Takes a little bit to realize when to stop. But remember, it's always easier to cut a little bit more than it is to put it back together. So if you only cut not far enough, let's get this here. If you don't cut far enough where it doesn't fold very well, just cut a little bit more, a little bit more. That way you kind of get a feel for it, because otherwise you end up with a bunch of little pieces and then you got to eat twice as many. All right, tenderloin. Now, it kind of goes in two separate parts. There's a little, they call it the chain on there. And you just want to peel that off. Now, these are very, very soft. You can literally just grab them and pinch them in half if you wanted to. So be careful. Don't get too aggressive with them. You just want to trim it down. Get this fat off here. All right. Now, there's a little layer of silver skin on the one end. This one is being super cooperative and just peeling off without me really having to do anything. So they don't all work that way. But that's what you're looking for. It's just a nice cleaned up piece. I like to do them whole, package them whole, that is. That way I can use them for whatever. I'm not tied to a certain way. But you can go through and butterfly them just like you do your back straps. You can smoke them whole. There's all sorts of things you can do with them. But you have more options leaving them whole than you do cutting them. That's why I do that way. So, all right, the inside round. This is the biggest piece, the most solid piece of muscle on the whole deer. It has a cap on it. By what I mean by a cap is there is a part, and you can, once you just cut a little bit into it, you'll find the seam, and it only covers about 2/3 of it. Sometimes only about half, depending on how it was treated when you took it apart. That cap comes off, and I want this fat off as well. On the inside of it, down here on the end, there's some silver skin. You want to take that off, because that is chewy. And then there is another piece right here on the other edge. That's not good for much else other than trim. That's pretty much it. You can leave your back straps. Sometimes you want to leave those whole, cut them into steaks, got a couple nice roasts, tenderloins, lots of jerky material. Your sirloins, one thing I recommend with those, I like to cut straight through them like I do for my back straps. And they're not super nice, but they make a decent little steak if you want more. So there's an option there. So there's really not a whole lot to a deer, but let me put it together and I'll walk through it again. All right, here is all of our cuts. Got our tenderloins, got a whole back strap, got some of those sirloins, got about 6 of them there. Made some stew meat, got some jerky meat. The jerky I cut out of one of these inside rounds here. The stew, I just cubed up a eye of round and the other bottom round. Got a couple of nice shoulder roasts, some nice backstrap steaks, and I mean, that's a good little bunch of meat there. That is how I cut up a deer. I really hope that it helps you guys out. I'm planning on doing a summer sausage and snack stick video. Those are coming, I just haven't got them filmed yet. So hopefully within the next couple weeks I'll have those up as well. Anyway, hope you guys liked this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't. We'll see you on the next one.